Well, good morning. Welcome to New Life. Thank you so much for choosing to spend part of your Sunday morning with us. I know we say this all the time, but some of you have literally never heard it before, and we're just incredibly grateful that you would trust us with an hour or so of your Sunday morning. Those of you who are kind of unfamiliar, I think most of you know, but we've got some guests joining us from First Church of God in Peacedale this morning, so want to welcome them. Yeah, go ahead. You should do that. Welcome them. Thank them for joining with us. As you guys know, I'll just recap this, and we'll talk about this again a little bit later, but starting next Sunday, I'm going to be leaving from New Life, not leaving permanently, just leaving from New Life after services here to go over and spend some time at First Church preaching there. So you haven't heard me preach yet, so you just hold off. Just make sure you believe that. And no, I'm looking forward to it. I think they're looking forward to it and looking forward to this opportunity. This is, I think, the way that I've thought about it. This is the kingdom of God is bigger than any one church. It's bigger than New Life. It's bigger than First Church. And I'm incredibly grateful to be a part of that and for them to be a part of us to be a part of them, and looking forward to what that means for us in the future as well, just as two communities of faith that are connected together by this one common love for Jesus. And so we're incredibly grateful to do that and be part of that. So super happy. Spend some time with them, visit with them afterwards, and just get to know them a little bit. I'm sure you will see a little bit more of them over as long as this journey lasts that we're going to be on together. But for this morning, we're going to talk a little bit. We're taking a break from our Jesus Project series of messages. Those of you who are part of New Life know that we're on this 3-year journey of listening to everything that Jesus said and did as we have it recorded in the Gospels, and asking ourselves if somewhere along the line we've gotten some bad ideas about who Jesus is. Maybe we could get rid of some of those bad ideas and we could take on some new ones. But we're paused from that. We did a couple weeks around Christmas. And this morning tends to be a little bit of a, like one of those, everybody's got like a post-Christmas like hangover, not literal hangover, but like that post-Christmas, I'm feeling a little slow, I'm feeling a little low, like everything's kind of, just quiet. And so I've always taken this sort of last Sunday of the year to just kind of give us a little bit of refocusing, give us a little bit of a break from all the normal hustle and bustle that we go through, and just kind of remind ourselves of what's really important and what's really significant for us as a church, as a community, and as men and women trying to follow Jesus. Because in all of this stuff that we do, I don't know if you've ever ever asked yourself this question, but there's this persistent question for me that, and maybe it's just because of the way I am, just because of my nature, but I am a why asker. I'm a person who asks, why do we do things? I don't know if you're a person who asks, why do we do things? If you're a person who asks, why do we do things, you probably got yourself in trouble somewhere along the line, asking too many questions. Someone somewhere said, hey, maybe we shouldn't ask why about those questions, because sometimes when we ask why about the things that we do regularly, the answer that we receive back is this answer: because this is what we've always done. Why do we do this? Well, because this is what we've always done. Why do we come to church on Sunday? Because this is what we've always done. Why do we sing these songs? And then we have the message, and then we have the song afterward. Because this is what we've always done. Why do we do the things that we do? And for people like me, and a lot of people like you, that answer is never really super satisfying, is it? Right? Like there's a part of you that's like, okay, so we've always done it that way, and yet, is it actually getting us closer to where we're supposed to be going? And oftentimes people who ask questions like, why do we do the things that we do in the way that we do them at the time that we do them, tend to get labeled as troublemakers. I've heard, countless stories from people trying, in life groups over the years who got kicked out of their Sunday school classes. They got kicked out of catechism when they were kids in Catholic church because they asked questions and they didn't have good answers to the questions. And so the adults in the room were like, just stop. I won't ask you to identify yourself this morning. If you were one of those people, it's okay. This is a safe place for you. So on this Sunday morning, on this kind of quieter Sunday, I want to remind ourselves, why do we do what we do? Like, why do we as New Life, and why do we as followers of Jesus, why do we as men and women trying to live in community and relationship with Jesus, why do we do the things that we do? Why do we sit here on a Sunday and listen to one person talk, and sing the songs and pray the prayers and have these moments of worship and kind of quiet and loud and all that sort of stuff? Why do we do that? Why would we do those of you who are part of New Life here, why would we do a 3-year-long series of messages just on the Gospels? And week after week, ask ourselves whether or not we've found some bad ideas and some bad opinions about who Jesus is so that we could get a better picture of him at the end. At the end of the day, I think what we ask when we ask why is we just want to know that we're not wasting our time doing the things that we're doing, right? That the things that we're doing are significant, the things that we're doing are important, and they're important enough for us to spend the time doing them. And so this morning, we're just going to kind of talk, reflect just a little bit on why we do what we do trying to follow Jesus. And here's the way that we've described it at New Life. We want to help you take your next step towards following Jesus. That's what we want. What we hope is, right, like at the end of the day, all of us who are part of both of these communities, both of these churches, both of these places that are centered around who Jesus is and what it means to follow Jesus, at the end of the day, we're trying to help someone across the table from us, across the room from us, across the office from us. We're trying to help someone else take another step in the direction of following Jesus. And we recognize that all of us are at different stages on that Jesus following journey, right? Some of us are at what we would call like an investigative stage. Some of us are at a stage where we're still asking a lot of questions about whether or not the things that Jesus said as we have them recorded in the Gospels are actually accurate. Did Jesus do the things that he did, or was it all made up? I mean, some of us that are, part of this community are asking questions like that, and those are important, significant questions for us to ask. Some of us have become followers of Jesus somewhere along the line, last 5-10 years of our lives, and we're really trying to seek out what it means for us to pursue and live in relationship with Jesus. And others of us have been at this place where we've been following Jesus for a long, long time, like 40, 50, 60 years for some of us, maybe more. I don't know, I'm not going to age you too much. But what we're trying to do, all of us, regardless of where we are, the reason that we show up week after week is because there's something in us that recognizes there's something about Jesus that's drawing us in his direction. And there's something about what it would be to follow Jesus that would make us, at the end of the day, look different than we look today. And if we were to become a better follower of Jesus, we believe that at the end of that process, the end of that journey, when we lay our head down finally for the very last time, that it would have changed and shaped and molded our lives in such a direct and powerful and impactful kind of way that we would literally never be the same again. And as we've unpacked the Gospels over the last couple of years together, I'm sure you've noticed there are some big themes. There's some things that we keep coming back to. In fact, there are probably some stories that we read it and you think, I feel like I've heard that one before. Like, did we cover that one already? Have we already talked about that? There are some phrases, there are some words, and there are some themes that just are repeated over and over again. You're not crazy for thinking that, because the gospel writers, as they told the story of the life of Jesus, made sure that we understood what was important and what was significant to him. They made sure by the way that they repeated these words, phrases, themes, and big ideas that we would understand when we read through those Gospels, these were the things that mattered to Jesus. And we should pay attention to the things that get repeated over and over again, because it seems pretty clear that those were important enough for the first people who were following Jesus to record them, pass them on, transmit them, tell those stories over and over again, so that even a couple thousand years later, we would still hear those words and those phrases and those stories told to us today. One of those most often repeated phrases of Jesus is very simple, but it's very powerful. He says it a bunch of different times in the Gospels. He just says, "Follow me. Follow me." Why do we do what we do? Because to some extent or another, all of us have heard this voice from Jesus saying to us in some way or another, "Follow me." And at some point, you decided that it was worth risking some piece of your life. And maybe it started off as a small piece of your life and it became a much bigger piece of your life over time. But at some point or another, you heard those words and you decided, I'm going to investigate that. I'm going to pursue what it looks like. In fact, here's how it shows up in the Gospels. Passing alongside the Sea of Galilee, Jesus saw Simon and Andrew, the brother of Simon, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And Jesus said to them, follow me, and I will make you become fishers of men. This is the first time in the Gospels that we hear Jesus go to people, stand next to them, stand next to Peter and Andrew, and then later James and John, a couple verses later in the same story, and essentially say to them, hey, I am asking you to take everything that you've ever known, everything that's familiar and everything that's comfortable for you. I'm asking you to leave that behind, and I'm asking you to just come and follow me. And they did the most remarkable thing. They followed. They left their nets, they left their business, they left their fathers, they left their networks, their social support, all the things that they were familiar and comfortable with, and they decided to stake their lives onto the life of this one person, Jesus. And they decided that they would go wherever he went, that when he asked them to come and follow, that they would go and follow. And you recognize, right, that this marked not just the next 3 years of their life when they physically followed Jesus around, but it marked the remainder of their lives. They believed that even after Jesus was dead, resurrected, and ascended back to heaven, they believed that they were still doing what Jesus had asked them to do the first time he met them, when he said, you come and you follow me. It shows up again in John chapter 1, verse 43. It says, the next day Jesus decided to go to Galilee. He found Philip, and he said to Philip, another one of the disciples, he said, you come and follow me. And Philip said, I will go and I will follow you. In fact, John tells us the story that Philip went from there, and he went and he found his friend Nathanael, and he invited his friend Nathanael, and he said, hey, Nathanael, why don't you come with me? I've found the one that I believe is the Christ, the Son of God, the one that God has sent into the world to rescue and redeem his people. And I'm going wherever he goes. And from that day forward, every decision that Philip makes, every choice that he makes gets centered around this word, these words, follow me. Go where I'm going. Come along with me. See the things that I'm going to do. Hear the things that I'm going to say. And if you follow me, your life will forever be changed. Another of the disciples said to him, Lord, let me first go and bury my father. And Jesus said to him, follow me and leave the dead to bury their own dead. It's a really revolutionary, it's not like one of those things that we like to think about when we think about Jesus. We don't think Jesus would say things like this. But this is a moment where men and women come up to Jesus and say, we would like to follow you. We are inviting ourselves to follow you. And Jesus says, okay, you want to follow me? Then come along. I'll take you for the ride. You'll see all the things. You'll hear all the things. But first, leave those other commitments. Leave those other things that you think are more important than this. Leave those to the side and come and follow after me. It's this really, again, what Jesus does is not very, it's not very inviting all the time. It's not very soft, and it's not, we've talked about this over the last couple of years, that Jesus says really remarkable, revolutionary, radical kinds of things to people, and we find that sometimes people hear those things and they decide for themselves, I'm not going. It's too much. What you're asking for me, Lord, I just want to go bury my father. I buried my father. I know what that feels like. And the man's asking, I just want to take care of this one piece of business first. And Jesus says, you can't wait. Come now. Leave the dead. Come follow me. And we don't hear the end of the story in Matthew's gospel, but the implication is that the man chose to not go, to not follow. As Jesus passed on from there, this is just a chapter later in Matthew's gospel. Jesus passed on from there. He saw a man called Matthew sitting at the tax booth, and he said to him, follow me. We've heard this before. And Matthew rose and followed him. He goes to this tax collector, this sinner, this guy that is an enemy of his people. He's a social outcast. He's an outcast in his family. He's an outcast to his friends. His only friends are the Roman oppressors who are keeping Israel under their thumb the entire time that we know and the entire time that they and their family and friends know. He is colluding with the enemy. Jesus comes along and says, I'll take you. I'll take you. You come and you follow me. You leave the tax booth, leave your source of income, leave your place in the Roman Empire, leave your position of some power and some status, even if you're not very well liked by your Israelite friends, you're well liked by your Roman friends. Leave all of those things and come and follow me. And Matthew decides to get up and to go. It's remarkable. Jesus would say this to this guy, and that this guy would choose to say yes to Jesus. Luke chapter 18, when Jesus heard this, he said to him, this is the story of the rich young ruler who came to Jesus and said, Jesus, I would like to know what the secret is to eternal life. And Jesus says, you know the commandments, you know the rules, you know what God has said to you, you know what you're supposed to do. And the man recites the things back to Jesus. And then Jesus says, you've spoken well. You've answered the question in the right way. You have the right answer. And then he says, one thing you still lack. Sell all that you have and distribute it to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. And come and follow me. And Luke records the end of that story, that the man had a lot of possessions, a lot of things that he valued more than the invitation to come and follow Jesus. And so, Luke tells us, he went away sad because he had a lot of stuff and he wasn't willing to give it away to go and follow Jesus. It's one of those moments inside the Gospels where I think the writers are asking us and giving us a moment to reflect and think about our own response when Jesus comes and says, come and follow me. And maybe for some of you that really resonates. Maybe at some point or another he invited you to leave everything, to go and follow. And you left everything, or you didn't. And you felt kind of that longing to follow in the footsteps of. And maybe somewhere along the line later on you decided this was the thing that you needed to organize and center your entire life around. There's one last place I want to hit in the Gospels, and it's important, and I think it's important and significant because it's at the end of John's Gospel. John tells the story of Jesus' life, and he tells it from a very John-centered point of view. If you've read through the Gospel of John, you know that John refers to himself as the disciple that Jesus loved. So that's just in case you were wondering. It's like John's little way of saying, I know he loved all of you guys, but I was kind of his favorite. In fact, when he tells the story, I love this one, when he tells the story of the resurrection, he tells about him and Peter running to the tomb. Peter takes off running to the tomb. You may remember this one. Peter goes running, and then John, telling his story, John runs ahead of him. He's like, not only did Jesus love me more, but I got to the tomb first. I was a little faster and I was a little more loved by Jesus than you. But at the end of John's Gospel, he tells this last story of Peter. And you remember that Peter has been following Jesus now for 3 years of his life. He's got this moment before Jesus' execution where he's asked, standing outside the trial, are you affiliated with? Do you know this Jesus? You must. And remember, Peter says 3 times, I don't know who this guy is. I'm not affiliated, not connected, never seen the guy in my life. It's a tragic moment of Peter's kind of faith. It would have been kind of depressing, discouraging, deflating if you're Peter. Comes through the resurrection, and John tells this moment about what Jesus does after his resurrection. He sits with the disciples on the beach. They're having some breakfast together, some fish, and then he takes Peter for a walk. And he says, Peter, do you love me? You remember this, right? And Peter says, you know I love you. And says it again, do you love me? Peter says, I love you, Jesus. And third time he says to him, do you love me? And Peter says, you know I love you. And here's how Jesus closes down the conversation. Truly, truly, I say to you, when you were young, you used to dress yourself and walk wherever you wanted, but when you are old, you'll stretch out your hands, and another will dress you and carry you where you do not want to go. This he said to show by what kind of death he was to glorify God. And after saying this, he said to him, follow me. This is the same thing at the end of the Jesus story that he says at the very beginning to the same guy, Peter. 3 years later, I'm still inviting you to come and to follow me. Peter, 3 years later, after all the stuff that we've been through, I still need you to decide again that you are going to come in my direction. What we see in the gospel accounts really consistently is that Jesus does not vary his invitation. Jesus says the same thing to all different kinds of people. When he shows up to Peter and Andrew and James and John and the rich young ruler and the person who comes and says, I want to follow you, and Nathaniel and Philip and all of these guys, Jesus simply says, if you want, come and follow me. And what we recognize is, right, that each of those people that Jesus is saying the same thing to have to hear that invitation in a different way, right? Because Peter is not even the same guy as his brother Andrew, and James is not the same guy as Peter, and John is not the same guy, and Philip and Nathaniel and Matthew and Thomas and all of these guys that Jesus invited at some point or another to come and follow him, they came from all of their own different unique experiences. They all had different things going on in their lives, so that when Jesus showed up and said, follow me, every one of them has to hear that in a unique and personal way. They can't just hear, Matthew, come follow me for Peter. That's not the same story. Matthew's not living the same life and the same story and the same experiences that Peter is living. And yet, Jesus comes to every single one of them, says the same thing. Follow me. And what we recognize, right, is that when Jesus invites them to come and follow, they make a decision in that moment about what they're going to do. Some of them declined the invitation. Some of them accepted and received the invitation. And then, every day after that, they are faced with the same decision. Following Jesus is a daily decision. It's not something that we just decided to do one time. It's not something that happened on the day you got baptized. It's not something that happened on the day that you got saved. It's not something that happened on the day that you came to the altar for the first time and you cried everywhere and there was snot all over the place and you were just so sorry about your sin and the way that you had been living your life. That's just the way I envision it. That's the kind of church I grew up in. There's a lot of crying and snotting and a lot of altar calling and all that. Like, that's how I grew up, right? So it's my tradition. It's part of my lived experience and my story. But having made one decision one time is not enough to carry you through for the rest of your life. Following Jesus is a daily decision. And so when we talk about why do we do the things that we do, why is it important for us to gather together like this? Why is it important for us to hear the word preached to us? Why is it important for us to sing the songs, to pray the prayers, to be shaped by the community of men and women that are around us? Because we recognize that it's something that we've got to decide to do every single day of our lives. It's not enough that you decided to do it once. And we need the support of other people around us. And we need that consistent invitation over and over again. Come and follow me again. Because if I know you like I know me, right? Like, we recognize your life gets difficult at times. Your life goes through challenging seasons where you following Jesus is not as easy and or convenient as it might have been at some other seasons or moments in your life. You go through moments where you doubt it. I know you do. You might not admit it, but you do. You go through moments where it feels dark and confusing and where it's really hard for you to see, where is Jesus going and how am I supposed to follow him? Because I can't see him. And I've gone through moments where I felt like he was close, and then I've gone through moments where it felt like he was a million miles away. And let's just be honest, right? It's really easy to make the daily decision to follow Jesus when it feels like, I feel Jesus. And it's really hard to make the daily decision to follow Jesus when it feels like he is absent. And he's not there, and we don't feel it and see it the way that we have at times past. And the first disciples, we think, well, they had the advantage because they were physically following Jesus around everywhere that they went. Well, yes, they were. But the way that they had to follow Jesus around was not any less confusing. Let's just be clear. If the Gospels tell us anything, it's that Jesus said and did so many weird and strange things that these disciples scratched their heads over and over again. Now, Jesus, what are we doing now? You remember the story about Lazarus, right? All the disciples are like, oh, the Jews want to kill you, and we're going to go back there. And then Thomas speaks for the whole group and says, well, we might as well go and die with him. Like these are the kinds of things that Jesus does over and over again, that even the ones who are following him around physically see him day after day, recognize that they are putting their lives in his hands, literally their lives in his hands. And it must have been a fascinating and confusing and painful experience at different times. But at the very core, Jesus is still inviting men and women to do the same thing. He's still inviting us to place the weight of our trust, our lived experience from wherever we are, and we've all got different experiences that brought us here to this moment. He's still asking us to place the full weight and confidence of our lives into him. And we are all still hearing the same invitation from Jesus. Come and follow me. And so whether you consider yourself on that investigative kind of seeking stage of this journey, or you consider yourself all the way over on the other end, fully devoted, all-in follower of Jesus, you know absolutely for sure that this is the way that you've chosen to live your life. At every point along the journey, we're asked again, will you come and follow me? Will you make that daily decision? And what we recognize when we do that is that following Jesus is uniquely personal. You cannot live anyone else's Jesus following experience. Don't try. It will go badly for you. If you try to live out someone else's experience of what it's like to follow Jesus from your experience, from your life, with all the things that you've lived through, you won't get it right, and you will be incredibly frustrated over and over again, because you'll say, why doesn't my Jesus following journey look like his or look like hers? Or why isn't my life turning out the way that his did or the way that hers did? Why don't my daily Jesus following decisions yield the same results? Well, because you're not the same person. Don't try to live out somebody else's story. We're not here to make you conform to live out someone else's story. What we're here to do is to invite you again consistently over and over again, come and follow Jesus with us. Come and follow Jesus with us, and let Jesus change and shape and mold you as the unique human being that you are into the man or the woman that he has decided for you to be. I don't want you to be me. You don't want to be me. There's way too much that happens up here, and it's very confusing sometimes. I don't want to live inside of your life. I want to live inside of the life that God has invited me to live inside of. And believe me, I have tried to walk around inside of other people's lives and other people's experiences at different times and moments in my life, because I respected them, who they were spiritually, and what their journey with Jesus looked like. And I've tried to make my life look like that. And I've found over and over again that following Jesus is uniquely personal. You have to take your next step. That's all you can do. You cannot take your next 10 steps all in one. Sometimes we want to do that. Get ourselves into trouble. Sometimes we're like, well, if I could just get back to where I was a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and we decide we're going to take some sort of shortcut to get back, and we're not going to go through all the little steps to get us moving in that direction, it doesn't work. We get ourselves lost. We get ourselves confused. We make life worse for ourselves. You take your next step in the direction of following Jesus. For some of us, that means we just keep coming back week after week because we've got so many questions, we've got so much going on inside of our experience, inside of ourselves, that's all we can do. For some of us, it's, sitting down in a life group with other people across from the table from us and having conversations and asking those questions and figuring out what it looks like to live inside of a relationship with Jesus and allow other people inside of our communities to shape and mold our faith and our relationship with God. We all have different steps to take. And here's the good and the bad news. The good news and the bad news. No one else can take those steps for you. You can't pass that decision off to someone else because following Jesus is uniquely personal to you. You get to decide what you do when you hear Jesus say, "Come and follow me." Because what I think, if you're listening, you will hear is Jesus saying that to you every single day. As Bill Belichick said, there are no days off. No days off. You don't get to decide tomorrow, well, I'd like to take a day off from following Jesus. You don't get to decide tomorrow when you go back to work and you deal with a coworker that's super annoying. Well, I'm just going to take this hour off from following Jesus, and I'm just gonna let myself not follow Jesus in this moment. And I'm going to share how I feel in good Christian love, of course. We don't get to do that. Jesus is inviting us over and over again. Come and follow me. He said it to Peter at the beginning. He said it to Peter at the end after all of the experience. Come and follow me. And so where we are as followers of Jesus is in remarkably similar place. Because no matter where we are, right, we're all hearing the same thing. Come and follow me. And you hear that differently than I hear it today. And there are different steps ahead of you than are ahead of me, and different steps ahead of me than are ahead of you. And that's the way it's supposed to be. And yet, together, all of us in this room are being invited in the same direction. Let's follow after Jesus. Why do we do what we do? Why are we going to come back and preach again next week? Why are we going to do moments like this where we bring these two church communities together and we sit together in the same room and we worship together? Because at the end of the day, we're all being invited to do the same thing. Let's follow after Jesus. Let's allow our lives to look and feel and be the way that Jesus invites our lives to look. And when we do that, then we genuinely honor him. We genuinely honor his life, which was given for ours, all of ours, when he invites us to come and follow him. I'm going to pray for you guys, and we're going to sing together, and then we're going to close with communion. Jesus, I'm grateful. I don't really distinctly remember the first time I heard you say, "Come and follow me." But I'm grateful that every day of my life, I have heard you asking me that question, extending that invitation to me. I'm grateful that I hear it again today. I'm grateful for us as church community, men and women gathered together here in this place, that we are here because we have heard you inviting us to come and to follow you. And I know that that looks different for each of us at different moments in our lives, but the story is the same. You ask us to give up our control of ourselves. You ask us to give up our independence. You ask us to give up everything to come and to follow you. And so today, we just want to respond in this moment. Yes, we'll go where you call us to go. We'll go where you lead. We'll follow after you. And we ask that in that process you would change and shape and mold our lives. That you would make us men and women who reflect more accurately who you are into this world. We're grateful for it. We love you for it. It's in your name that we pray. Amen.